Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens got that victory that they needed, making the division and playoff chances ever more likely than before, beating the Steelers in a fashion that was unexpected to say the least. Both starting quarterbacks of the game went down with concussions, so it was the battle of the third backup, Anthony Brown versus Mitch Trubisky. And that was a decent part of the game.
We got it. We got what I wanted. We got the Ravens versus Mitch Trubisky. I didn't think we would.
It only took a few plays, too.
But we did. You know, we've had all this talk about this is the first time the Ravens would play Kenny Pickett. How is that going to go? First time the Ravens are facing a high rookie draft pick of the Steelers at the quarterback position since September 2004 when we were starting out 7th grade. And here it is. Yeah, 2 series. And then, unfortunately for him, he got hurt. And we got to see a pick fest against Trubisky. And I'll tell you what, we'll get into it because there's plenty to talk about. But I think my number one takeaway from this game is Marcus Williams is the key to this team. And it was excellent to have him back. And I don't know if this would have been a win if not for him there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I remember texting you guys yesterday during the game because I know most of you guys were in person. I was just at home kind of recovering from my time off. I'm back, by the way. Hello. Hi. Nice to see you all.
Welcome back.
But I remember texting you guys. I was like, are we in the time machine? Like, what's going on here? Because this game was all about the defense, in my opinion. Solid run game as well. You couple it together. It's so weird, I guess, in the Lamar era because, you know, on one hand, our offense is kind of predicated a lot on the run game and a little bit on defense. It just hasn't really been the same level as we've seen in years past, but this was truly a throwback game. And yeah, the turnovers from Mitch were a huge part of that. The defense played absolutely incredible. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Peter. Marcus Williams, getting him back was huge. Inside linebacker play also. What happened? Like this, it looks so good right now. It was just a lot of good things to see on the defense. It's so funny because, you know, I was maybe like a little worried at the end of the game that the Steelers might be able to pull something out. Mitch didn't seem to have too much trouble throwing the ball. He just made a few mistakes. But that being said, like, it really was one of those throwback games of like, you just, with the way the defense was playing, you could count on them to make a stop, and they did.
Yeah, the defense and special teams won the game for the Ravens without a doubt. The game was decided by 2 points, 16-14, and there were 4 instances that the Steelers were driving. 3 of the instances were in field goal range. One of them, they were driving, but then they threw the deep pick to Marcus Williams. But the other 2 were the inside linebackers. First up, Roquan. He got a pick at the 15-yard line or so, was able to run it back a little bit, stopping a very promising drive. And then the next drive, I think it was, but if not, it was only 1 or 2 drives later, Queen makes a very acrobatic catch over the middle, which ironically enough, I said right off my message got messed up at Discord. My phone was acting weird, but I was like, I said, that's a pick, and the ball was like just leaving his hands. Like the camera hadn't even panned yet, and I just had a feeling with the way the coverage dropped back and like where he was throwing the ball, I was like, that ain't gonna work. So like, sure enough, it was a pick, and yeah, it was really cool. Like the defense bailing them out in those situations. Any one of those, if it went the other way, at least would have forced the Ravens to consider going for it on 4th down when they were driving, or just change the way they approached each drive.
Yeah, and turnovers are so key, and we've seen in years past when the Ravens defense hasn't been able to get them, how much harder that can make it for a game for the offense, and when you do get it, how it really is an extension of the offense in reality. And it goes without saying, again, just props to the Ravens for making this trade. We said when it happened that Roquan was probably going to be the final missing piece this defense needed to get unlocked, and week after week it continues to prove to be that. I still think we still need to see him and Queen in tandem against one of the elite pass offenses in the league to really know the full extent to what how this move has raised this Ravens defense. But gosh, it is so much fun to watch them, like you guys said, and it's added an extra dimension to this defense, and it has been huge and critical given all the injuries on offense.
Yeah, I think, the other thing, we're kind of continuing on the defense too. It is great, I think, to see these guys who, have been playing well, but I think have been a little bit underappreciated, I think. Because we've had, historically, the last couple of years, had such a good secondary. This is a game I think Marlon Humphrey, didn't play as well as he could have. I think he got beat on a couple deep routes. I think a few of them were just shots that Mitch took, and they were kind of like 50-50 balls. I know Pickens got one or two shots on him. He didn't put him on his butt. Fortunately, we didn't see any, Pickens beast mode kind of situations going on. But Marlon got beat a couple times. Peters seemed to play somewhat well. I think he had that penalty at the end of the game, which is, continue to drive, and that kind of led to a touchdown. But they were getting picked on a little bit, but to finally see these other position groups step up was just really, really great. Another group that also has been playing pretty well so far, I thought continued to play pretty well. Defensive line still continuing to show dividends. Calais had a pretty good game. Jason Pierre-Paul also had a pretty good game. Bowser got in the mix as well. Matabuke, even though he had that bogus roughing the passer call, man, I thought he had a pretty good game as well. All guys stepping up on the defensive line as well.
Yeah, you hate to see when they do that kind of crap. That they need to redefine that rule. Like, if you want to say he tackled him too hard, I'm sorry, I don't think he even did that. Like, I don't think he drived into him. I think it was a fair and square sack. And the way that gets called game to game, extremely inconsistent. And I honestly think any play where the quarterback is pressured is now a potential flag throwing affair. And it just comes down to judgment on their end. And that seems incorrect to me. Like, you're just not allowed to sack the guy unless you know that he's tucking it away. It's crazy to me. I don't know how you're supposed to get sacks in this league.
Well, what's funny about it is Trubisky got the star treatment. That's a call you expect Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes to get, not Mitch Trubisky coming in injury relief of a rookie quarterback. I can't imagine that the NFL officiating head, when they review that, is going to agree with the call. I'm guessing, just in the moment, maybe something about the downward motion looked like he was putting a little extra in there to the refs. But yeah, on replay, definitely the wrong call. But it's a great game by this defensive lineman, though, like we're saying, and not just in the on the defensive side. I mean, Calais Campbell had an excellent game, and that extended to a game that certainly had an impact on the outcome of this game when he got that block kick.
Incredible, he's able to pull that off, getting so many snaps, the highest snap person on the defensive line, and highest snaps outside of the secondary and inside linebacking group. So it's just incredible how this guy is producing at such a high level with so many snaps on his plate.
Yeah, that's crazy. We kind of glossed over it a little bit too, but yeah, Peter, you mentioned that the block field goal. I mean, between that and between all the interceptions, honestly, the defense was incredible. Had an incredible amount of stops while the Steelers were kind of within field goal range, to be able to stop at least, I think 3 of them. Maybe that interception by Marcus Williams, I guess that kind of counts as well. It may have been a little bit longer field goal because I remember that was a deep pass, but at least 3 drives, the Steelers were within field goal range, and the Ravens shut them out. They didn't even got 0 points between all of those. I mean, that's incredible. That's not something that we're used to seeing, at least over the last couple of years. But, I mean, yeah, that's definitely a mark of a truly great defense that's been playing. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been kind of going toward this, of just letting up fewer and fewer points. A couple duds in there, I think, like the Jacksonville game, I think in particular. But if you leave that one out, I think the defense is definitely trending in the right direction with all the pieces we've got.
Yeah, and I think you can leave that one out because that game, obviously you didn't have Marcus Williams and you didn't have Kyle Hamilton either. And we do know that as good as the starting secondary is for this team, and the depth is pretty good as well at safety. At cornerback, we know this team is incredibly thin. And even when you look at the starters, Marcus Peters, we've talked about his up and down year, not really quite what we hoped for coming out of it. But if they're able to keep these safeties healthy, like I think that can be the difference in this team. And I think this is a great transition here because, we have so much beat up on the offense. We don't know if Lamar Jackson's going to come back. We hope he will. We don't know when he comes back if he's going to be at full strength. This team's best shot at making a deep run in the playoffs and this, challenging for the Super Bowl looks like it might be keeping this defense playing at a high level when you play the Joe Burrows and the Patrick Mahomes and the Josh Allens of the world. But is that sustainable? We have that note here in the document, and I think that's a worthy discussion and something that a lot of the Ravens flock is having right now.
Yeah, I put that in because what I'm seeing, at least from this Ravens team, is that they doubled down on making this defense exceptional, and they really are playing at that level. They're able to get lots of turnovers. The run defense is suffocating, and really the delta comes in the pass game. And I don't even think it's because of a lack of talent or bad plays, as much as it is just the way the NFL is structured. The passing game is so heavily incentivized, and it's easier in a way to get points. Like, for instance, I put in the notes, I'm going to pick on the wound of Pickens at least one more time. The guy, for all the rawness he apparently has, he does some really savvy veteran things. The guy is great at the very smooth push off. It just looks like his arms are flailing around like normal because he's running. Nah, he's pushing off a little bit. That's good. He's able to just get the side. I mean, he dominates the sidelines. He uses his frame and knows how to use it. I mean, he's a really good player, and there's plenty of those guys in the NFL, and it's really hard to defend them given the rules without getting a flag thrown. And sometimes you get a flag thrown even when you defend them perfectly. So it's I don't know if I guess what I meant when I put this in is that I honestly think if you have an offense that's super consistent in the NFL and high firepower, I think that's more valuable than a high firepower defense, just because of the way it's tilted in the offense's favor. I think it's more consistent. The defense can get caught in a bad place or two, and they don't get the high variance turnover plays, and suddenly everyone's complaining, oh, they stumbled under pressure, they choked the game away, and no one ever says that about offenses. The high-powered offenses, I feel like they don't get the same level of scrutiny.
I kind of see what you're saying, but on the other hand, just I'm thinking, kind of how maybe the Ravens front office is kind of thinking, right? I mean, look at the Bills game, the Cincinnati game from earlier this season before we brought in Roquan, right? I mean, we held the Bills to 23 points? Pretty low for them. Now, I mean, granted, I think they've had a couple of games like that in the second half. They've been a little shaky in general, but their offense sometimes hot and cold. But I mean, that game, at least in that part of the season, I think was definitely an outlier. I mean, they were outscoring everybody at that point. So the defense, I think, was worth that. I think in that situation it worked. And the Cincinnati game as well, Burrow had all the weapons that he needed at that point, and they only scored 17 points. Now, granted, they're a team that's also they've been trending up the last couple of weeks, so much so that I think people are. It's actually funny. When I was on vacation, I met somebody who was a Steelers fan from Pittsburgh, and he had mentioned that oh yeah, Cincinnati's going to run away with the division, and I was like, who's still in the first place, right? it's still the Ravens, but they are trending up. That being said. But 17 points again without Roquan. So you add a piece like that and it continues to get better. And again, assuming health of the defense and everything, it's not that much of a stretch, I think, to say that okay, we can hold these high-powered teams to few enough points. And if you couple that with the health on the offense, which I think is that right now is kind of the big key, because we're not really seeing the health on the offense. It still has not really all come together. In fact, I think it's been just as shaky, if not worse, on the offensive side. But if you did have both sides healthy, I think the formula could work. But I do think, kind of to Peter's point earlier, just the path to the Super Bowl right now really is going to have to lean on this defense hard the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, the next couple of weeks, absolutely. And I am 100% in the camp of, like, the Ravens' best chance at making the Super Bowl is getting Lamar healthy and getting this offense back to the most potent that we know it can be, like what we saw against Miami, against New England. Now, of course, there are players in the game that, mainly Rashad Bateman, I guess, but yeah, that's going to be the Ravens' best opportunity to make the Super Bowl, of course, is to have that correct, complete team. But I personally don't believe that if, let's say, worst case scenario, Lamar doesn't come back. That'll be awful. But let's say he comes back and the offense still is what it's been the previous couple weeks before he went down, just, struggling to score touchdowns, not up on all cylinders that we think it can be at the passing level. Rushing level will probably still be league above average to best in the league, particularly if Dobbins continues to stay healthy. But, it's interesting to me in this debate of whether or not teams can win this in today's modern NFL with defense that, it seems that the majority of people with this argument always hone in on the elite offenses that did it, but seem to forget the elite defenses that did. And of course, yes, you look at it more often than in the past few years, it has been the teams with the high-powered offenses doing it, but defenses still won it. This might be too far away, of course, but 2015 isn't that far away still to remember how the Broncos defense completely dominated the playoffs that year and shut down the Carolina Panthers offense, which had been the top offense in the league that year by far. Very few people saw that coming in the Super Bowl. San Francisco in 2019 and 2021, I mean, granted, look, San Francisco shutting down NFC offenses left and right in the playoffs those 2 years. Could have won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. It was more their offense and Kyle Shanahan's play calling that messed up that Super Bowl. Of course, yes, their defense could have held on a little bit better too, but a better offense could have helped there. But
New England, New England against
New
the
England
Rams,
in 2018, right? I do agree that in the NFL, it is skewed to favor the offense, but I don't think that defense being able to carry teams in the postseason is completely dead. It's just something you're going to feel less comfortable with.
Yeah, I think
that's absolutely true.
That's the biggest part, I think, is like you can have the best defense ever and go against good offense, and you're just like, I don't know, man. It could go either way. Whereas when you have a really good offense, you're like, well, we're going to outscore them.
Right. But that's what we felt going against the Titans in 2019, right? And how did that work out?
Yeah. No, it's crazy.
There's no guarantees. Even if something's more likely to happen, it's not guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing that was kind of cool about this game, and I don't want to move away to the offense just yet, but I think it's worth saying, the devalue positions on both sides of the ball are almost like fully decided off-ball / inside linebacker and our good buddy, the running back on offense. But it turns out when you have really good players at those positions, there's still plenty of ceiling to capture. And that's kind of how I put it. Maybe their floor for those position groups is higher than the other positions groups. And maybe the other position groups are still, quote unquote, more valuable. But it's undeniable what a good inside linebacker, a good running back does to the cohesiveness and the synergy of their respective units. I think it is undeniable from this game. What we saw is that when the inside linebacking play is that high, the run game, it can barely get going. If you're lucky enough to get past our front four, and you probably aren't, the second level is not going to let you slide. And you're only going to get a couple yards. And then furthermore, in the pass game, we're just seeing they're playing better. I mean, they're not perfect. I think Roquan is to blame, honestly, for that touchdown to Freiermuth, because he was supposed to guard the inside leverage so that Hamilton could take the outside leverage. But he bit on the bait underneath, the things that we would complain about Queen doing, and then boom, the throwing lane was open. So, it's one of those things that happens. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, that's literally why the play was designed the way it was. The play worked as intended.
It is good play call and good exexecution by Steelers. You have to give them credit there.
Yeah. And it's and that's one of the things too, man. With defense, it's like it worked. The offensive play worked, but it's just I think worth pointing out that I just think the way that those guys play, particularly the run game, it's just like, forget about it. Like, don't bother. You might get a couple runs here or there. You might get lucky for a drive, but it is not consistent. No one can run against us.
Yeah. Najee Harris on the day, 12 carries for 33 yards. The team as a whole for the Steelers, 20 carries, 65 yards. Rush defense was dominant. It forced the Steelers to have to pass it probably a lot more than they would have liked to with Trubisky. And, and to go back to what you're saying about how in some instances in this game, a lot of instances in this game, actually, it was the devalued positions that really starred and had an impact. I think something that we forget about in this conversation is that, sure, maybe it's a player playing a position that's devalued, but what you can never devalue is playmakers. And that's what both Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith are, even if they're playing at a position that, is devalued in today's NFL. And we always knew that about Queen. The knock on Queen was never that the guy couldn't make a splash play. The knock was always, like you're saying, some instances where he wouldn't read the coverage correctly, would bite on and wouldn't be sure tackling. And we're seeing those things get cleaned up. And, something I thought about today is we talked a lot about this in 2019 and 2020 when they paired Queen with Josh Bynes or LJ Fort, more so Bynes if I'm remembering correctly. And there was a lot of talk of, okay, well, now, Queen, his play is better now because he's out there with the vet and, he's not the Mike anymore. But maybe we're ragging, a little too much on Queen in retrospect on that. And maybe it wasn't as much that, okay, so Queen needs that vet out there to help him get into position and to make plays and to make his and to give him easier assignments. Maybe it's, hey, wait a second, like the other guy that he was there with, whether it be Malik Harrison or Christian Welch or whoever, like it was too much for that guy, for Queen at that stage in his career when he's still trying to learn how to play the position at the NFL to compensate that much for the inabilities that those guys had, the shortcomings they had. It's another way to look at it that I don't think too many of us have given Queen the benefit of the doubt there. If you look at it, and in retrospect, you're asking a lot of a guy to come in and be the guy, and then pair him with someone else who's floundering even more than he is. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, that's a good point. The other thing I guess I was kind of thinking about as you were talking with it though is, it could just be a situation too of like the position group. Maybe it's really is that hard to simulate in training camp, and that because another kind of pattern I think with Queen is that beginning of the season's always rough. But even even last year, like near the tail end of the season, we acknowledged that he was playing better, right? Kind of the same formula this year as well. I mean, I think it has started a little bit earlier, for whatever factors that is, right? But, think about it, the position that you have to know how to play the run, you have to know how to play the pass, you have all these different, strategies that you need to be able to take, you need to be able to recognize all that stuff. I guess you can definitely view film, right? That is something you can do, but sort of figuring out the tendencies and then figuring out like, okay, what am I actually like going to expect or not? That stuff, it does come with time, right? It comes with getting more film on the other teams, knowing what their tendencies are this season, and then being able to react to that. So, that could be another thing as well. It's like, it's just the kind of the nature of the position group. And unless you have a guy that's like a generational talent like Ray, where he's just seen so much stuff that he can just recognize it. That's really, really hard to replicate. But yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line though is, yeah, Queen has been playing at a very, very high level. It's great to see. I mean, this is what we wanted from him all along. And to see him and to see both him and Roquan playing at such a high level now, it's it really transforms his defense into something like really special.
I think before we move on, we got to talk a little bit about the negatives. Marlon, man, he had his worst game of the whole year for him. And that's saying something because he had so many good games back to back to back. But I like the fact that he acknowledged it in the tweet. He knows it. And I think he's going to bounce back just fine. I think he's totally allowed to have a bad game here and there. And I remember him once saying in his Studio 44 that sometimes these rookies will surprise you and then, you won't second guess him again. That was when he was younger. And then he started kind of learning from that. But I think he's going to have to take a bout or two with Pickens, figure him out. So it seems like maybe after this matchup, maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll say he had a dominant game. He was able to slow down that guy. He figured out his schemes. And also, it came in like one big bunch, but the Ravens' missed tackling was really bad for a sequence there. And in Ken's notes, in his defensive notes, he said it netted them 5 first downs, and I buy it because I remember there was at least 3 that I remember, and I can imagine there being 2 more where the missed tackle is what sprung him to get a first down. Particularly, I think there were at least 2 or 3 that maybe those are the ones I remember most fondly, so to speak, that were on third down, and it would have ended the whole sequence. So something that they need to pay attention to and clean up a little bit.
Right. I think the one play on that series was that pass to the running back that I think both Roquan and
Warren.
Hamilton. Yeah, they both missed tackles.
Yeah, we were like, hey, can you get your first rounder back in there? This guy is, what are you doing? Because he had like back-to-back plays that were decent.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of, I don't want to shit on him too much because, it wasn't too much. But I know that, like you've said, that, Najee is just another guy. And I just thought it was so funny that he just had such a hard time running on this Ravens defense in the first half. And the only way you get a touchdown is just by extending his long arms. That was literally the only reason, because otherwise, he was stopped. There was no reason to do it, but, didn't get his hands, and he was able to put the ball over the line to get the touchdown. But I just thought that was really funny.
Yeah, definitely a couple tough things from this defense. I agree. I think that everything that Marlon's shown us this year, that game will, his effort today will be an anomaly on the season. Of course, it's something to monitor. I mean, that's on film. Teams are going to see that, and they might try and exploit that. But Marlon, he's an All-Pro. I think he'll be fine. But yeah, I mean, overall, really solid performance from this defense, and definitely played a huge impact here in the game and made the job easier for the offense.
Before we continue with the show, we want to announce we have a special free pick'em pool with DraftKings this week. The winner of the pick'em will win $1,000, and all you have to do is answer 9 questions as best as you can about the upcoming Browns versus Ravens game. We're talking of questions like who will cover the spread, will the game go over or under the point total, who's going to score the first touchdown, which wide receiver is going to end up with more yards by the end of the game, things like that. So it's a lot of fun, completely free, and we encourage you to share this with as many people as you'd like, any friends or family members, because 150 people need to participate in order for someone to win the big $1,000 prize. The link will be in the show notes and on our Twitter page, and I hope you guys have fun with this free contest that we are doing in conjunction with DraftKings.
It was great that this was a win, but we got to talk about at the front, quarterback, another one down, Tyler Huntley, just being a little too reckless there and got a concussion. Hopefully he'll be ready to go by next game, but we'll see. We've seen players miss a following game before once they've gotten into the concussion protocol. So Anthony Brown had to step in, darling of the preseason, and didn't do much, but to his credit, he did the little bit that he had to do at that time to get the Ravens the win.
Yeah, he had 1 scary pass out of his 5. Whereas Huntley had, I don't know how many passes, but he had 1 scary one too. Or at least 2, actually, 2 scary ones that were near picks. And yeah, it was not great. I think that's another not Lamarism for Huntley is he can run, but he's not nearly as good at protecting his body. The man really sacrificed his body a couple times in this game and for nothing. He didn't get the first down in any of them. And one time he got hurt. So pretty unfortunate for him. Hopefully, it sounds like he's on the right track and he should be available. But you never know with concussions; they can kind of come back and bite you midweek. So we'll keep an eye on him. Not to peek into the preview too soon, but looking at how the offense was able to perform and what we're leaning on right now, I think you lose a little bit, obviously, going from Huntley to Brown, but I don't think it's all that much. Like, I remember in the preseason we were talking, maybe you could trade Huntley and, like, use Anthony Brown as your new backup, reset the clock. And honestly, after watching it, I was like, yeah, you probably could. Like, he's not as good. I'm going to say, like, pretty confidently, not as good. But I don't know if he's that much worse.
Yeah, I don't know. From my watch of it, I kind of agree with that. Definitely agree. There are a lot of little things that, maybe Huntley doesn't do that Lamar does, which are very obvious. And I think, protecting your body on runs, or escape from a pocket or whatever, Lamar's way better. In terms of like stretching the ball to get the extra yard or so on those runs, definitely Huntley there was a few, I think, he reached for one, he was still a yard short. By the way, also, don't know why Harv challenged that. I mean, I guess maybe he thought that the timeout was just kind of useless at that situation, but they ended up going for it and then continuing to drive anyway, so it just seemed kind of a waste.
They lost a football length from it when they replaced the ball down. I mean, it was categorically a terrible challenge.
Yeah, it was a little weird, but what? Anyway, we're talking about Huntley here, but I mean, I don't know. He can definitely he's I'll say this about Huntley: he's very efficient at running the offense in terms of he's not going to force feed certain players to getting the ball, Andrews. Definitely good at finding whoever is open and being able to make the throws. Is he going to make every throw? No. But he is going to be able to set himself up, take what the defense gives you. It's not going to wow you. That's why he's never going to have I would say never, but he's probably not going to have more than 200 yards passing a game or something. I just don't think that's the type of player that he is. But yeah, I mean, then again, Brown, at least for this game, credit to him. He did come in in a very hostile environment and was able to, execute the few plays that he did. So kudos to him. I think he won a game ball for that. But yeah, I kind of agree. They're to me, it seems kind of similar players. So it makes me feel good, especially with the matchup coming up against the Browns. Browns aren't looking too good right now. Watson's not looking good at all. It is a division game. You never know. We'll see what happens. The Browns are a lot like us. It could, provide some issues. But if we had to go with Brown another week, I think that's okay. We just can't lose any more quarterbacks. That's the problem. Because then we go to Andrews, and nobody wants to go there.
No, Brett Hundley. Brett Hundley, he's available.
If they bring him, I don't know. But anyway, Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I think with Huntley, we know who Huntley is, and the best thing you can say about Huntley, I think, is that the guy's a Raven. He plays hard. He's going to give it his all. It certainly seems like he's got a great rapport with the guys. He's the backup, but he can come in and the Ravens can win with him if everything else goes well. And I think he's valuable to the team in that capacity, and hopefully he'll be able to be in there for Cleveland. But I agree. What we saw from Anthony Brown was it made you nervous that if the Steelers went down and scored, got up ahead, would this team be able to come back and retake the lead? The answer, what we looked at with Brown looked like probably not. But here's the thing, though: if he does have to play against Cleveland, like you guys said, that team's banged up. They're on their season's on life support if they haven't been eliminated from the playoffs by this point yet. But at the same time, I think it's unfair for us to really say whether or not Brown looks like he could step up if he needs to or not, because that was his first NFL action. Your first NFL action, you get thrown in a must-win game in your team's rival city's stadium. It's loud there. They got the terrible towels going. And so, welcome to the NFL, buddy. Don't screw this up, right?
1 yard line.
Contrast that with Huntley. I mean, this guy. Exactly, right. And, that's tough for anyone. Huntley, to his credit, at least, he had to step in the playoffs, of course, but he had at least gotten a chance to get his feet wet a little bit in the NFL and in relief at the end of blowout wins against Jacksonville and Cincinnati at the end of the year. It's small bits, really only a drive or two there, but still, he had sniffed an NFL field before. He'd taken live snaps. He'd be like, okay, so at least you're not you jumped into the pool. You adjusted to the temperature there. So again, I agree. I would really hope that Huntley can play because we know what we have with Huntley. Brown is a question mark at the moment. Honestly, from what we saw in the preseason, Brown might be a better passer than Huntley. But Huntley's certainly the better athlete, even if doesn't have the same scrambling ability that Lamar has. But it's just going to be whatever it's going to be, right? And hopefully, luckily, the Ravens have Dobbins and Edwards back. And I guess we can talk about that next because both of them had themselves a great day against the Steelers defense. Thanks certainly in part to a offensive line that had Ronnie Stanley back, Kevin Zeitler out though, but opened up some of the biggest rushing holes I feel like we've seen all year.
JK, my God. This man put the team on his back. He looks so good, guys. I mean, yeah, offensive line played incredible. But it's really good to see a healthy JK back. I mean, he had his vision, he had burst, speed, maybe not 100% there yet. I think if he was a full speed, I think he would have outran Fitzpatrick on that one run. But but he ended up getting a touchdown in like 2 plays later, so it was no big deal. But I think he's going to be a huge part over the next couple of weeks with the quarterback situation being what it is. Lean on this guy because he looks just so explosive right now.
Yeah, Dobbins' first and second gear, no problemo. It's the third gear that's missing in action. But the beautiful part is he can get so many yards, like you said, Chris, just with those traits. His ability to read the holes, his balance through there, and power is what's giving him these 5-yard carries. And that's such an incredibly important thing for any offense, particularly ours, is to keep the trains on time. Them getting those kind of yards on run plays is awesome. And for them to be confident they can gain, 3 or 4 yards. Like on a 4th down play, I feel like with Dobbins back and Gus hopefully getting healthier, on 3rd and 3, you're much more comfortable running the ball than you've been for years because these guys are just way better at it. And I just think it's cool how that whole drive went, man. It was 45 seconds, 48 yards, 2 plays, all JK. Like, it was an amazing moment for him in the first quarter after, first game back after his injury, cleanup surgery.
It was beautiful to see. We've been missing that. We missed that from the offense last year. We've been missing from it this year. When he's healthy, Dobbins, outside of Lamar, is probably the biggest playmaker on this team. And that's no disrespect to Mark Andrews or to Rashad Bateman. It's just that's what that third gear is. And even we see, like you're saying, when he doesn't have that yet, just his vision, his moves that he has there, his ability to break free can flip the field. And the Ravens haven't had that in a running back really since Ray Rice, really. I mean, Justin Forsett could do that a little bit, but certainly not with the consistency or with the moves that Dobbins has teased in his rookie year that he could do, particularly in the last quarter. It's desperately needed. This offense is going to need playmakers to carry it while Lamar is out, and seeing Dobbins look better than he did earlier in the year after that surgery, incredibly encouraging, and hopefully he can continue to stay healthy because he could be, again, I talked at the front, Marcus Williams being back was a huge reason the Ravens won. Dobbins being back might be the second reason because that was their only touchdown of the whole game, and it was the game or the drive where he just was able to break loose.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you look at the final stats, 15 carries, 120 yards, averaging 8 yards a carry. That's incredible. Even Gus Edwards had a pretty good game as well. I think he averaged 5.1 yards a carry. It's one of those things. I do think, I do think the Steelers have had some issues in run defense, generally speaking. So, I mean, there is a little bit in terms of like the opponent. I do think that they've struggled a little bit with that. But that being said, like, yeah, I agree with you guys. I think you got to lean on them. The only kind of thing right now that kind of concerns me a little bit is just, Mark Andrews, kind of where's he at? Obviously, he had a little bit of a was it the shoulder injury a couple of weeks ago? Still not sure if it kind of been recovered from that, but it just seemed like guys weren't really looking at him too much. He did end up with 2 catches, about 20-some yards, I believe. And I think those were pretty critical catches to be able to move the chains, but just hasn't been that dominant force that he was the first couple of weeks. I really don't know what to make of that at this point. It's a little concerning just because, like, outside of him, where's the pass game? But that being said, some guys are continuing to step up. Robinson, I think, continues to get involved no matter who the quarterback is. He caught passes from both Brown and Huntley, I believe. And then Deshaun Jackson also got involved a little bit more. It looked like they were trying to favor him and more snaps this week than they had in weeks past, although I didn't watch the Denver game, so I don't know how much he played in that one. But at least from 2 weeks ago, I think he had more snaps than he did. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the passing game is still going to have to figure out something to be able to carry this offense forward a little bit. It's good to have a great run game, but in certain situations, I think you mentioned it earlier, Peter, of just, if the Ravens had to come from behind and get a field goal at the end, I don't know if I had much confidence in just basically J.K. Dobbins and the offensive line just being the only weapons to be able to make that happen.
I think you bring up a good point about Robinson. I've been noticing, he's able to move the chains a lot. He just seems to have a knack for catching the ball. And Melissa Kim from WBAL brought it up during Harp's presser this today, speaking about the fact that I think he has 15 in the last 3 games first down conversions. And that's pretty impressive given the amount of touches he's had. It means, I think, basically every time he touches the ball, he makes a first down. And I think the guy does not get enough respect for the fact that he's one of our leading receivers because he got cut from the Raiders. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, like a guy who was cut from the Raiders. Like, no, they just goofed, all right? The Raiders are a bad team. Did you watch what they did this week? They're just not that good. And then to your point about Mark Andrews, I think it's just super frustrating. I think the decreased quality of quarterback play is what's to blame because the man was wide open on the series that we ended up kicking a field goal on. Totally lost in the coverage, and if Huntley saw him, he could have thrown the ball anywhere and it would have been completed. And there was just no one around. He could have completely adjusted and still scored a touchdown. So just a huge miss. Huge miss there by Huntley.
And what's so frustrating about that play was I'd have to go back and compare it to what we saw against Denver, but at least the route concept that Andrews ran was the same exact thing that he did where Huntley missed him against Denver as well. And he was even more wide open against Denver. Okay, so sure, there was a safety that might have clamped down on him. He might have been short of the sticks there. But he was wide open. They even called it out on the broadcast. and Huntley just never looked his way, which was a little concerning to me because, from my perspective, I was like, well, that play looks like it's designed to go to Andrews, and he didn't hit him last time. Right. And then also, Andrews and Huntley had an excellent connection last year. I mean, Andrews, he played really well with Lamar, but his monster games, aside from the Colts games, came when Huntley was in.
Right.
So that's really interesting to me.
And
Green Bay. Yeah. The Cincinnati game where Ravens got blown out, but Andrews he had a huge game there. The Cleveland game when Huntley had to come in, he hit Bateman a lot too, but Andrews had even more catches that game. So that is really interesting, considering everyone else who he's throwing to he didn't play with last year. So, yeah, I don't know what that's about, but I agree. It's not. It doesn't seem to be any decrease in Mark's ability to get open. Now, again, yes, he has had a couple drops when he has been targeted that seem a little uncharacteristic. I agree his shoulder injury might be still lingering, but if they want to go to him, he's still getting open. That just doesn't seem to be where Huntley wanted to go with the ball for whatever reason. But yeah, again, I do think we need to talk about Demarcus Robinson. I do wish that he could be a bit of a deep threat for this team. We know that he has the athleticism to do it, but that part of his game just hasn't been unlocked yet. Maybe they'll be able to figure that out because this team obviously needs a deep threat going forward. But he is doing the little things extremely well. He's playing better than I thought he would going into the year, and he's making a case to stick around here next year as well. He's got a rapport with the team, and it's interesting to see him shine. I still think he needs to be more physical to really be a guy that they can count on and step up and be like a emergency wide receiver one, like say in the basically along the lines of what Kamar Aiken was in 2015. But he's carving out a good role for himself in this offense, and regardless of whether or not he improves on it or is just kind of maintains what he's been at this point, that's a piece you can definitely use and can definitely have an impact on drives and be someone that the Ravens can use in key situations to keep the offense going. That's not the find that we were hoping for in the offseason at wide receiver, but certainly someone who's coming in and finding a way to contribute.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a great Ravens wide receiver too, because he blocks well too. He's able and willing to block, and I think the Ravens will extend an offer, and it'll really just come down to mutual interest and make sure the dollars are right. I can't imagine being particularly expensive. Might be like a vet min guy at this point. So really just kind of an exciting find, like you said, Peter.
I do think that we do also need to talk about blocking in this game. Run blocking was incredible. We'll start with that. And as we said at the outset, Ronnie Stanley was luckily back in this game, and he did his old self. He was great in this game, but we got to see the NFL debut. No, wait. Cut that out. Cleveland played last year against in Green Bay. Never mind. But he was stepping up for this year. He was on the field for the first extended time. Split time with Cologne, I believe. I saw Cologne in there a lot. Alec has the game book up to tell us exactly what the snap counts were. But I hear a little bit of a chuckle there. Maybe Cleveland didn't play as much as I thought he did. But, I don't think you need to watch the film terribly much or terribly hard to notice that the run lanes were different this week, certainly compared to last week. And it felt like, to me, they seem like the biggest they've been and consistently big all year. And the running backs, again, all the credit to Dobbins and Edwards, they really didn't need to work that hard to get into the second level because the line was just doing such a great job of clearing out the trenches for them.
Yeah, I think Cologne ended up getting the start. Played the first series, and then Cleveland was in for a couple more series. Still, Alec, if you have the numbers, feel free to jump in. But yeah, I mean, I think from what I saw, Cleveland, continues, I think, to just be a monster in the run game. A number of really great blocks. Pass protection was a little bit iffy. I think there were a few kind of situations I felt like he didn't do an ideal job in there. I thought Cologne did a little bit better. Was a little bit more consistent. He's just not as physically imposing in the run game. But hey, look, I mean, certainly for just given the situation with where the team was at, they needed to be able to block on a few plays, keep the quarterbacks upright for the couple passes that they needed to. But otherwise, it was the game plan. The game plan is going to be running the ball all day, and I think they delivered.
Yeah, Chris, we see it the same way. Kind of had the same kind of notes on it. Basically, what I noticed is not only did Cologne got the start, but he also got 77% of the snaps. And what happened was, when Cleveland came in, for his 23 snaps 23% he was in, 14 snaps, the guy made 2 or 3 highlight run blocks. And you're like, wow, the guy really dominated his man. But the problem is his pass sets, like you said, were not that great. He let up a sack, and I would say you could maybe even credit a second sack to him because the pocket collapsed. I don't think he did a good handoff with Moses, and I didn't track it as far as like when did he not get any action after that? But I based on the time of the game and the amount of snaps, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that after that second, almost sack or whatever you want to call it, it was a sack. It was just like it wasn't on him or not. That's when he got pulled because the thing with Cologne is he won't dominate the same way and he won't make the same kind of highlights, but he won't kill you. And if we've learned anything about offensive line play and grading, the reason why Ben Powers is grading so well, and this is not a knock on him, he's just never going to kill you. Like, he has some good blocks for sure, but like the biggest asset is that he doesn't kill you, and that's just super valuable from line play. So yeah, Cologne kind of ran away with it, but the nice news is it sounds like Zeitler's going to play next week. It was a close call this week, and there have been rumors and leaks suggesting from maybe the wife that he'll be ready next week. And just to kind of wrap up that segment, Stanley 100% of snaps, 100% All Pro. Like, the guy, I think, won't win it because it's a tackle and no one talks about tackles, but is clearly the comeback player of the year in my opinion, and he will be the Ravens comeback player of the year without a doubt.
Another guy I wanted to give a kind of a quick shout out to, Morgan Moses, I thought played pretty well against TJ Watt. I think Watt only ended up with 1 sack on the day, which, to be honest, I thought was more of kind of like a coverage sack. It was just, it was kind of inconsequential, I think, at the grand scheme of things. But, from a guy who's continually kind of wrecked the offensive line, as he's been here for a lot of offensive lines, for that matter, I thought he played pretty well against him. I don't know if that's something that stood out to you guys or not, but definitely, like I said, I think Watts had some pretty big games against us in the past, and I thought he was kind of a non-factor in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, both quarterbacks only got sacked once apiece, and we talked about that. Unfortunately, some of that, at least one of that, was due to, like we said, backups in there at the right guard position. If Zeitler was in there, maybe you only have one, but I think that was a really good thing to point out because Moses, he's been excellent in the run game this year. At times, he has struggled in pass protection, but yeah, I didn't watch it as closely as it sounds like you did, but I did notice that when I did focus in on Moses, it looked like he was doing a pretty good job in pass protection, had his sets good. So, I think he did play very well. As we talked about with Steve, TJ Watt is still getting his conditioning back from that injury, but it's not like he's the only guy they have. I mean, we're talking about Alec Highsmith. I don't think I heard his name at all at the game. They kept him in check. Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that Chris Wormley would have more sacks in this game than Alec Highsmith? I don't think we would have put the odds too great on that.
I tell you what, man, he seems to play well. He seems to actually step up his game when he plays the Ravens. I got to be honest.
He does, yeah.
Oh, he absolutely does.
Sure.
He has to hate us, man. Like, being traded in division is just so insulting.
Well, especially that big of rivals, too. It's like,
yeah,
they're only crediting him with half a sack yesterday, but that was still his only sack on the year, and that's the first sack that he's had in the NFL. Man, he does really hate Baltimore since the last time that he was on the field against Baltimore last year. Dude, the last 5 career sacks he's had, 4 of them have been against the Ravens.
Yeah.
One of them, there's one against Tennessee in that span, but for a guy who's had 8 sacks over the past 2 years, half of them been against the Ravens.
Yeah.
All right, never mind. Okay, so the odds were actually a lot better on that than I thought. I hadn't. God. Okay.
It's funny.
Props, Chris Wormley.
Well, maybe Chris Wormley was their MVP, but we want to talk about ours.
We're not done. We're not done, man. We gotta talk about that 4th down play.
Oh, you're right.
It's 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row, for all the valid criticism that Greg Roman gets, and some invalid, some of it's too much, but look, there's a lot of it that is valid with this offense. The past few weeks, the calls on fourth down have been really effective, and I think that we've seen a lot of creativity in that aspect, and this time was no different. And once again, what did the Ravens do? It was kind of that fake end around to Duvernay, right? Fake jet sweep to him, but instead Gus took the ball, if I'm remembering correctly.
Correct.
And that worked. I think we definitely need to give credit to that on this offense, for all the things that this group is having trouble with. Something that's very hard to do, fourth down conversion, something that was very key to the 2019 Ravens offense success, is something that we're seeing this unit do really well right now in the second half of the year. And that's key. That's going to be something that's important, and hopefully they can continue to have wrinkles on those formations that'll continue to keep defenses off base, because it's been big in the wins as of late.
It's funny when you were bringing up that call. I'm pretty sure that fake sweep to Duvernay to Gus, that was the same call which got the third down, which iced the game. Right, we were 3rd and 3, and I think they just had to get that first down to be able to close out the game. I think it was the same exact. I just watched it actually.
They used it at least twice, because it was the Dobbins play as well, Dobbins scoring play,
right.
And it was the third down icing play, and the only thing that kind of went bad on fourth down was that fumble. It was just like a bad snap, never got
also
handled.
in Cleveland.
Yeah,
that was also on Cleveland.
It bumped into Cleveland. So, it was funny. Harb said he had a game-winning play because he was able to get that fumble from JK. And it's funny, we come up with a lot of things that he did wrong in the game, but he had a game-winning play. Hopefully it keeps him out of the doghouse. I would love to see the guy develop, because it just seems like he has so many traits, but he does make a couple not-so-great plays here and there. But yeah, Giro, honestly, man, he called a great game. I think he was pretty disciplined. I only said, "What are you doing?" once, and that was on the last drive. They threw that pass that almost got intercepted, and I was like, my God, the run game is working so well. The whole point of this drive is to kill clock. Do not pass the ball unless you have to. Make them stop you. And they can't do it. That's the most beautiful thing. I don't think there's anything more gratifying. It might honestly be more gratifying than elite defense, but hard to say. I think they're kind of similar because of the nature of it. But nothing's better than that I know that we're going to run the ball, and you're not going to stop it. We're still going to get 5 yards. And yeah, you might stop the second down play, but we're going to run it again. We're going to get the first down conversion. Nothing is more gratifying than just extending drives, killing clock, and running the ball down their throats for a score to ice a game. And the Ravens were able to pull that off in the fourth quarter. Huge.
I'm looking back at the game log. I don't know if that play I'm referencing was a fourth down play. Am I crazy? Or
the call was a third down play with Gus Edwards, and it was a first down play with J.K. Dobbins for sure.
Okay.
Those two did happen.
No, it wasn't. I don't know what I'm thinking of. I thought it was a fourth down play. So you,
it was it kind of felt like a fourth down play, because it was if they don't convert this, they're gonna have to punt it, and it was a huge leverage play.
It was a key conversion late, and it's short yardage. I think we can extend the discussion to could their third down conversion rate be better? Absolutely. I think they were 4 for 13 in this game, but when it's coming down to short yardage, the team they have a lot of stuff that's working there, and while their passing game might be predictable, I think that they're throwing wrinkles there that are keeping the defense guessing, and that's a part of the offense that is working really well right now. Yeah, 4 of 13 on third down, but those 4 that they did convert, they were impressive.
I'm surprised it was 4 of 13.
I was too, looking at that. It felt like they did a better job watching the game in real time than that. But yeah, that 4 of 13 on third down efficiency this game, 1 for 2 on fourth down.
I guess they never got the third down in some of the drives they did best in. That's the only
probably.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was was a 4th and 1. It was a Huntley QB sneak.
Yeah.
And then there was the other one, which is that was the fumble. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely there were some good calls on the key third and fourth downs, but I mean, yeah, again, like from what we're talking about, we were on a second quarterback, we ended up going on third quarterback. Like your options are limited at that point, so 4 for 13, like just I don't know, take it with a grain of salt. Like it's not the be all end all. I do think we need. We talked earlier about just like can this offense and can this team basically can this offensive defense play deep into January, right, and playoff football, and like I think it's like yes with a star, but like I think it would be extremely unlikely for this team with Huntley and or Brown playing significant snaps like into the playoffs. I think you need Lamar there, right? Lamar opens up so many more things with this offense that with an already limited offense, which I'm sure anybody would agree, like we're not as dynamic in terms of like the passing game. It is limited. It is more limited, but there are benefits in having that of like you said, Alec, of like, if you know that we know that that we're going to just run it down your throats, like that opens up a lot of things that other teams can't lean on, right? But in the event that doesn't work, you need a dynamic player like Lamar to be able to, do some other things to be able to get your team back on track. And, we'll just have to see the next couple of weeks. I think, given the schedule, given the opponents that we've got, I think there are some really favorable matchups, but, fingers crossed, man. Hopefully he comes back healthy and, Huntley's able to come back healthy for next couple of weeks and continue to ride this out.
Well, now we can do the MVPs, right?
I'll go last because I got 3 guys that could get it, and I think you guys are definitely going to take 2 of them. So
I feel the same way.
Oh man! All right, well, let's
Chris,
see.
do you want to go then?
Yeah, I want to go. JK.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we mentioned everything, man. It was so great to see him. He looked the healthiest he's been all year. Oh my God, it's so good to have a great running game again.
I can't wait to see the photo of him celebrating his touchdown with everybody. I want to go scroll through the photos of the game to see that. I'm going to give mine to the man, the myth, the 6'8" legend, Calais Campbell. He's been showing up everywhere. He blocked the kick. That kick would have won the game for them in theory. Well done.
All right, we're gonna say my whole list. You guys had 2 of the guys I had on there, and then of course I don't think it should come to any surprise that the last guy I had on the list was Marcus Williams, back again, got an interception again, was there in coverage several times, stopped some of those Pickens plays from being bigger than they ended up being. Definitely looking like he's going to end up being one of the best free agent signings in Ravens history, and just adds a dimension to this defense that has been sorely lacking, with the exception of that 1 year of Earl Thomas since Ed Reed.
I knew you were going to pick him, so I was like, I'll take Calais. Also, I wanted to put that 6'8" thing in. It's just incredible. The guy's such a beast. Such a beast.
Mount Campbell, as I had it in the notes.
Mount Campbell. Well, that wraps it up for One Winning Pod. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube, where we're posting exclusive content like our NFL Bets Against the Spread and Ravens History Corner. So make sure to subscribe to that for all that fun content. And we'll be back later in the week to discuss the Cleveland Brownies. We'll be playing in their stadium this time. And if the Ravens win it, I believe they lock up the playoffs, and will be close to locking up the division, mattering on what happens with Cincinnati Bengals. And it would almost definitely kill the hopes and dreams of playoff run for the Browns. So very pivotal game. We'll see you later in the week.